Well, hello everyone, and welcome to Painless Universal Conversation with myself and Welsh. We all know about how finding your voice and learning to use it, which is something we all struggle with. We always trapped in a situation where we find it absolutely impossible to use our voice. But my guest today, Celina Chavannes, will be telling us about how she's done this, her new book, Can You Hear Me Now? How I Found My Voice and Learned to Live with Passion and Purpose. She's a former Canadian politician, served as a member of the parliamentary in the House of Commons in Canada. She was appointed parliamentary secretary to Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and also parliamentary secretary to the Minister of International Development. She told the Prime Minister that she was not standing in for re-election. And let's find out why she did that, why she decided it was time for her not to continue in the government, but to go out there and search for her book. All of these questions she had answers in her book, but it's always nice to talk to her and understand the difficult issues that faces many minority people when they go into power and how she was able to channel those difficulties and find her voice. Meet Celina. Well, hello everyone and welcome to Painless Universal, a conversation with myself and Welsh. My guest here is based in Canada. She was a politician, as I said in my introduction, so I won't say much about her because if you listen to the introduction, which I always advise you to, you will know more about her. But Celina, thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
And I am so good. This has been a wonderful experience with this book. And, I'm really excited to be on this journey of now.
I know and you are doing your journey at the right time, especially with this whole pandemic. I think it's giving people more time to be at home and really reflect about what now means and what their life, what their passion, what their purpose truly is. And I think for me, this is truly the reason why Painless Universal reached out to you, because your journey is so meaningful to so many people in so many different ways. You touch all levels and you're not afraid to speak up for us. And before we get to all of that meaningful conversation, I would just love you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Who is Celina? You are such an amazing person. Who are you?
So I'm complex, I'm number one, I'm very passionate about people. And I'm most passionate about people who are the most poorest and vulnerable in our world, right? And that could be either together or separate, poorest and vulnerable. And usually those people look like me, women of color with multiple intersecting identities. So when I talk about equity, I'm always thinking about that person, that individual who needs someone to advocate for them, who needs someone to amplify their voice. They are not voiceless. They are people who are speaking and no one's listening, or they're whispering because they're afraid to talk about what is happening for them. So I'm passionate about that. I'm passionate about mental health. I disclose my mental health challenges with major depressive disorder and anxiety, because again, I want people to understand that it is in that vulnerability, it is in that speaking up that others get the strength that they need.
That's absolutely true. What was it like for you as a child growing up? Because I see you now, you're a politician, you've done so much and you're very focused on what you do. What was it like as a child growing up?
So I discuss my childhood a lot in my book in the first couple of chapters, and I dedicated the book to my mother. My mother and I really didn't have the greatest relationship. And I dedicated the book to her because I said that she is the iron that sharpens me. So I am here as this resilient individual who is fiercely advocates, is not afraid to break glass ceilings. Because Annie, when you break glass ceilings, the glass is going to fall somewhere and you're going to get cut.
Absolutely.
So I was not afraid to get cut, because that person who raised me, she was tough. My mother was very tough on me. And I say in a line in my book, as I say, I feared her while she feared for me, and therefore treated me the way she knew the world would. And so she really was tough on me. We were really strict. School was everything. And so those pains that I have from childhood, I think are what guide me right now. All of the values and principles that I hold very dear are tied into that childhood pain and
Mm.
has become my purpose and my passion.
That's beautiful. I think it's most Africans and most any black around the world. I think we could all listen to that voice. Our parents, especially our mother. My mother was so strict, and she would not let us even go out or do anything. And that resilience as well gave me that fear. Why, mom? What is the purpose? Why would you want to keep me ransom like this? Is there something you're hiding me from? And when you look back on the way your mother shielded you, was that what led you to keep going through, like go to university, or was there kind of resilience? Because I think most people want to know, especially people who are bringing up kids now and now trying to think, oh, probably I should be like my mother, and that would make me my own child become a better child. What would you think has that helped you in any way?
So that's an interesting question because, I went off to university and I didn't do well in university. In fact, it took me 3 years to finish a 6-year degree. I was kicked out, I was failing, and it was a real mess.
Oh,
I think that the underlying principle, though, is that even though whatever happens, even the mistakes that I made through university, which were a lot, that whole chapter is just a mess. But all of those mistakes that I made, I had a foundation that was built on that from the teachings of my mother, as strict as she was. So even when I faltered, I remember thinking, but I could do this. Even in my lowest moments, I thought, no, 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 this is not how it's going to go down. I could do this. And you could get back up, right? It's a foundation that I think really pushes you because you could do better. You have been brought up to be that person, to work twice as hard, to go twice as fast, to do twice as much. So why am I just chilling right now? Why am I staying stuck in my misery? I could do more.
you found your joy somehow. You just went
Yeah.
around it and found your joy. And it, where would you put it in? When you started a healthcare startup, right? That was successful. But in it, what was so fascinating about it is that you knew from a young age that you were struggling at university, and you just talked about it now. Then you started a successful healthcare company and a research management company, but you did not include any of your images of yourself on the website. When I heard that, or in any advertisement, when did you realize that the world was different and things like this will not be to your own advantage?
Oh my goodness, that is a very interesting question. I've never been asked that question before, so I've never had to think about it. Um,
Oh,
but you're right.
mm,
I didn't put my images. Maybe I think subconsciously I remembered because I talk about my father in the beginning of the book,
mm,
and at a very young age, seeing something that I described as the haunt, and I didn't know what the haunt was. And the haunt, when he came home from work that day, he was so sunken. It was like his body was small and he was wrapped into himself. And I remember thinking, I don't want whatever is happening to him to happen to me.
mm,
And so I think in somewhere very deep in my subconsciousness, I knew that racism existed
mm,
and I didn't want that to happen. I didn't even it was not like I was saying, oh yeah, I've experienced racism, so I know I'm going to do this. That was not the case at all. I just knew that it would be a better strategy for me not to put my face or my anything related to my gender, so my race or my gender on any advertising material, because in the research industry, I ran clinical trials for pharmaceutical companies. I ran national epidemiology studies for governments. I knew that world was dominated by older white men, usually, especially in the brain space. So all of the work that I was doing was related to neurological conditions. So older white men. I didn't want to have to have my ego of having my face on there stop me from getting the client. I wanted my service to speak for itself.
that is true. I think that is a beautiful way of answering it, because I agree. You think whether it's the right or wrong way to do it, but at the end of the day, you have to think about your service, all you've worked hard for all your life, and you don't want something just because of the way you look being a barrier of you getting ahead of all your hard work. Did you notice
Yes.
a difference when you go into a room and then they finally realize, okay, there she, who is this? This is not the person. We don't recognize Celina.
Now that's the best part of the story.
We don't recognize who the hell is Celina.
No, they don't recognize. So even the colors that I chose for the company were orange and green. So the pill, it was a capsule. Top of the capsule was green, the bottom was orange. So everything was really orange and green. It just threw you off of anything related to femininity or race or anything. There was no fists, there was no pink, there was nothing. And I showed up once to one of my clients, and I only showed up after we had fully executed agreements. If we didn't have a fully executed agreement, you were not seeing me. We were doing everything by fax, by email, by phone. That's it. Once you signed and we were already started, I would show up, because then I had to get the FDA agreements, the Health Canada agreements, things like that. I had to get physical signatures. So once I showed up, and the client, he came out, the physician, he came out and he's like, "Oh, I can't see you right now." I was like, "Oh, okay, I'm getting paid either way at this point." So I could sit and wait for you. I mean, my money is still coming in if I sit here for an hour or I sit here for 10 minutes. So I sat, and then he came back and he said, "My 11 o'clock is late," or whatever time it was. "It's late." And I said, "Oh, no, I'm not. You said you didn't have time for me. Are you ready now?" And his look on his face, like, you could see that he was saying, "You're Black,
Yes.
you're a woman, you're young. Who are you? And you're supposed to be the owner of this company." That's not what I had in my head. And so it takes a moment. You could see the humility on their face kind of go,
Wow.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a humbling moment for them. And it's actually a moment of grace, I think, if you really internalize it, a moment of grace where you realize your power and you don't really even have to exert it. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I know it. Absolutely. Because I think, you're going through the door that you're going through because of what you can actually deliver, not based
Yes.
on anyone saying you could deliver, you're tall, you're smart, you're beautiful, you're whatever, that you're going based on, I could do this job and I would do a very good job. You signed the document without even seeing me, so you know I can.
Yes.
So this is just,
Yeah.
I do get what you mean. That's so beautiful, actually. And I think so many people should, if we could base the world on a colorless and just base people on based on their ability, I think the world would be such a beautiful place. But you went on to
Such
politics. You went on to politics. How did that transpire from from doing healthcare, which is, I mean, I would have thought you would stay in healthcare, which is more interesting, more fun, more direct than going into politics, which has this, it's as his name says, politics. It's not as black and white. What led you on that journey?
So it's interesting. So, you know, chapter 1 to 9 of my book is basically my story.
Mm,
And there's nowhere in that up until 2013. There's no conversation about politics. I never took a poli sci course, was never interested, didn't really watch it on TV. Just I voted, but I wasn't really a part of the democratic institutions. My daughters, who are very political, are really the politicians. I just played one on TV for a little while. But in 2013, my company was approaching its 10-year mark,
mm,
and it had won a couple of awards. We had won the Toronto Board of Trade Business Entrepreneur of the Year. We had won the Black Business and Professional Association Harry Jerome Award. We were speaking internationally. It was doing really well. And at that time, I thought, well, at the 10-year anniversary, I want to do something big. Either I'm going to take the company global and
mm,
not just North American, or I'm going to leave and go into private enterprise for a little while. Two options in
mm,
December of 2013. So I decided to do an executive MBA. And in that executive MBA program, there was a politics course. And in the politics course, they were talking about your political capital and how politicians could help you achieve some of your goals. And at the time, I was running Canada's first national epidemiology study on neurological conditions. So we were looking at scope, impact, health services, and risk factors for diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, epilepsy across the age continuum, and trying to see the commonalities that existed. And what we were finding was that people would have to leave one province or a state and move to another state or province in Canada because their drugs were not covered from one provincial formulary. So they'd move so that their drugs would be covered, or they'd get divorced so that their services for their condition would be covered. And I thought, oh my God, that is horrible. And so in that class, when I heard this man talk about the fact that politicians could help you with that, I thought, well, I want to do that. I want to help people get that. And so so that was December. By February 2014, I signed up for the first time ever as a member of a political party. So I joined the Liberal Party. So I'll be like getting a membership to the Democratic Party.
Yes.
And then I started getting emails from them. And on March 8th, International Women's Day, I got an email that said, invite her to run. Do you know a woman who'd be interested in running in the next federal election? I was like, you better believe I do. Me.
No.
I'll do it.
No way. No way. Are you kidding me?
And the rest is history. Yes, that's it.
Wow.
That's it.
Oh my.
But this is what happens when you open up yourself to the universe, right?
That's true. That's true.
Right. Because I had two choices in December. Less than 2 months later, I had I was going in a completely different direction.
Well, what did you do at the okay, when you decided to take the leap of faith and put your name forward, and then the federal, and you got it, what did you think you were getting yourself into? And you had your successful business. What did you do about the business as well?
So there's a lot that happened in between there. So this is March of 2014. In April, so the next federal election is in 2015, October 2015, right? So I have a lot of time, so I think. Then the current member of parliament in my riding, in my district, he died. So we had to do a by-election. And I lost the by-election, went into a massive depression. My husband, I ended up leaving that study because the study was funded by the government, that national study. The study was funded by the government, and the contract, because I'm partisan, I could not continue to maintain the study. My husband quit his job to help me run the national campaign because we wanted to win. We are pulling money out of our children's savings, out of RESPs, out of everything to live and run this campaign. And then, so I lose that first election, and then the general election comes up, and I'm like, I'll be damned if I lose another election. So the general election comes up, I change the strategy. I change it completely because the by-election, I was running it like a politician. I was trying to be this political character that I had no idea about. So I ran my political campaign in 2015 like a business person. I was the CEO. I gave all the titles. The project at the end was to win an election. And then what did we have to do working backwards? How many doors did I have to knock on? We win that election. I am watching the TV screen. I'm looking up, and all of a sudden I see that little red check mark beside my name. And then it sets in. I have no idea what I'm about to do.
Oh, goodness me. I can't believe it. But you know what? Your business skills came into play here. And
Yes.
I mean, your business skills. And I think this is where, when you are good at what you do and you take what you've learned from whatever it is into something that you're now passionate of, which is giving back to the people, it just multiplies into something extremely so successful because you just played the business role. You knew what you had to do. Oh my.
Yes. And I've always said that in business, I married my two loves, my love for research and my love for business. I married them together. But at the heart of that was people,
Yes.
right? So the politics piece. So when people say, I want to get into politics, I always say, well, what does that mean? Because you have to be passionate about something and then do that passion in politics. It's not
Mhm.
that you just want to get into politics because you like
Yeah.
political process.
Mhm. Yeah.
What are you going to do
Yeah.
while you're there to represent your people? And so I was when I got there, I knew that I was going to use my research background, my business background to help people. How that evolved is a different story.
That is so amazing. So your book tells it talks really clearly. Let's go into your book now. It says, "Can you hear me now? How I found my voice and learned to live with passion and purpose." You wrote this book after you've left politics, right? You've decided to leave politics, but in politics, what are some of the key lessons you learned while you were in politics?
Yeah, so my political journey was interesting. So I was there for 4 years. I started off as a liberal or a Democrat, similar thing. And by the time I left the Liberal Party and sat as an independent. Um, and that was the first lesson because when you sit as an independent, you have to cross the floor and you're not sitting with a party. I was sitting by myself in this lonely seat it makes me choke up every time I think about it. And this lonely seat at the back of Parliament.
Mm.
And there was nobody sitting around me, and somebody took a picture of me there. And I'm in my scarf, I'm shivering, like you could see how cold I am. I'm hunched over, and it's almost as if I'm trying to, it's the exact same picture of my father
Mm.
many years before, right? Where I've experienced all this racism and sexism in the institution. And now I'm sitting as an independent and I'm hunched over. And I look at that picture, and every time I look at it, I cry because I'm like, that is your most painful moment.
Mm.
But it is the most liberating moment. That is the most powerful picture I've ever seen of myself in such a small state. Because in that moment, even though I was so scared and so afraid of being by myself. So we had the Liberal Party was voted in with a majority. We had 180 plus members of parliament. I was the only, and then the opposition members, there are 338 members of parliament in the Canadian government. I was the only Black female. So not only the only Black female, I'm now sitting by myself in that moment. And it was so lonely.
Mm.
But I said to myself, Celina, you are sitting on the right side of history.
Exactly.
Stand in your power.
Exactly.
Not today, girl. Not today.
Not today.
You can shiver,
Yeah.
but don't let it get value, but it will never break you. If you stand in your values, you stand in your truth.
And you work together and you are there to represent others. So no matter how
Yes.
difficult it might be at that point in time, you are representing so many people because so many other girls saw that picture and realized, you know
Yes.
what, if I give this a good shot, I have a chance of being in her shoes one day. I really do have
Yes.
a chance of being in her shoes because your message really spoke for, because when you were also there, going back to it, you really spoke, you fought for the advocate for gender and racial equity. You weren't just there, you focused a lot on racial issues and equality. Why did you, oh, I know you said your father, but was there a push from the community as well to really focus on that subject of racial equality?
Yeah. So in the first 2 years that I was there, I was trying to really figure myself out. And it was really a struggle because I was being met with, I knew I was being tokenized right from the beginning. So that was 2016. I actually can map them out, the years of everything. I was tokenized the entire 2016. I was excluded from very important conversations related to the Black community in 2017 because I was vocal. I was pushing the government to do things that they said that they were going to do, like repeal mandatory minimums, like do these things that I knew my community needed. And so at the end of 2017, I said to my husband, I can't play small anymore.
Mm.
I can't do this. it is going to kill me if I continue to play small within this system. I'm going to have to speak out. And my husband's like, no, 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 babe, calm down. We don't want you to don't go full Celina on them,
Yeah.
right? And so in September of 2017, I'd been hearing stories about young girls that had been removed from school or shamed because of their hairstyles. So I went into Parliament, I had my hair in braids, and I gave my first speech in September of 2017. And people were like, why is she talking about braids in Parliament? And I wanted people to know at that moment that my job was to represent people whose voices are often silenced, or the people who whisper their pains, the people who talk about microaggressions and nobody listens, the young girls who sit in their classrooms and are told they can't go to graduation, they need to move, or the teachers that pull their hair into these elastic bands because it's too poofy. I wanted them to know that they belong in schools, in the workplace, in the boardroom, and yes, even here on Parliament Hill. I wanted there to be a message that went out in the grassroots, deep in the grassroots, that said, I see you and I'm here for you and I'll ride for you. Let's go.
Wow. I applaud you, Celina, for doing that, because I think, I have beautiful young girls myself, and I always look at them and I say to them, you're beautiful. It doesn't matter your hair texture, it doesn't matter what you look like. Just know you are beautiful and you could achieve whatever you set your mind to. And you've paved that way around the world, not just in Canada, for others out there that could always refer to you and say, look, she did it, and we could all do it wherever we belong. Because, when you look at your background, you are originally from Haiti. If I
From
remember,
Grenada,
Grenada, Grenada. And all of a
Yes,
sudden,
yes,
look at you as someone who's
yes.
originally from Grenada coming out here to do what you do. It shows that if you believe and you really believe in what you stand for, you will make it possible. You will make
Yeah.
anything possible. So how is your book going? And could you share with us some of the content of your book? I
Yeah. So
can't
can
wait.
you hear me now?
Yes.
Um, so yeah, I actually debuted at number 4 on the national bestsellers list. So
Wow.
it's doing really well in terms of sales.
Congratulations. Yes.
Thank you. What I'm hearing back from people is, which was interesting, people of all backgrounds, because I really thought this book is going to resonate with Black women, right? And I thought, if Black women get it, I'm good. But then I see these messages from older white men and women of all backgrounds, different genders, and they're saying, I see myself in your book. I see my childhood. I see some of the pain I went through as a young adult. I see some of the challenges you had with your marriage. I see some of the, where I talk about my miscarriage in the book, right? Like they see myself in some of these pains. And, when I wrote the book, I thought, you could just write a book that says about all the highlights in your life. I wanted to talk just as much about the low times, because we usually see we live in a world that's very filtered. Instagram filters like sort of make us look flawless. And people think, right. People think, here's Celina. She's an immigrant, came to Canada at 2 as an immigrant, and now is the parliamentary secretary of a leader of a G7 country. Man, she's fantastic. Oh my goodness, she's like just perfect.
Yeah.
No, blood, sweat, and tears is what happened to get here. Like there was a lot of hurt and pain and mistakes that I made. And I wanted people to know in this book that it's okay to make mistakes, that they're survivable. And if you take the time to learn the lesson from the mistake, you could add the mistakes and the flaws and the hurt and the pain to your strengths and your determination and your resiliency and your joy. And all of those things create value in you.
Absolutely.
And therefore you are an asset to every organization, conversation, institution, community that you are part of. So the book is doing so well.
Oh my, absolutely. No, I really, really can't wait to get my copy. I'm sure it should be here anytime soon because I've just ordered it. And it speaks total. But before I let you go, I need to ask you, How did you, Celina, find your own voice? And how have you
Oh.
managed to live with passion and purpose?
And so, Anne,
Mhm.
I want to be very clear with this that, it seems like at this point that I found this voice, I found authenticity. I'm still finding it. I'm still forming forming, meaning it's an action, forming a perfect union with my imperfect self. So
Yeah.
there's going to be times when imposter syndrome comes in, and there's going to be times when I doubt myself. There's going to be times when my mental health gets too overwhelming. And I tell myself that that's okay. But I also know at the heart, like I said right at the beginning, at the very deepest part of me, there is that drive, that fuel, that empathy that I know from my own experiences that other people are experiencing. And so if I, with this privilege that I have, everybody is, always giving me a microphone. I'm on the morning shows, I'm on this show, I'm on, that. If I'm not using that microphone that people are giving me to amplify these voices, then
Yeah.
we say representation matters.
Mm,
Does it really, if I'm not using my voice to actually be the sound of those who are whispering?
that's
if
true.
if representation matters, shouldn't I be ensuring that there is equity in systems for people who do not have what I have? Shouldn't I be using my privilege for good?
Yeah.
And so, in the struggle of finding my voice, the one thing that has remained consistent is my passion. And the one thing that I've learned through politics is that purpose is never determined by a title. So leaving politics doesn't mean because I don't have member of parliament or politician as my title, that doesn't mean that my purpose is gone. That means it's just invigorated in a different way. Just like I transitioned my business skills into politics, I'm transitioning my purpose from politics into advocacy globally.
And that is really working because I reached out to you. I saw what your work you've done, and I see everything that you stand for, which is really what in today's world, 2021, you've seen what happened in 2020. It's all about finally we're speaking up, and you have been speaking up, and finally people who have ever had their doubts about our lives matter will now honestly realize that she's actually saying something, and we all now need to really listen. And any girl out there who's too scared to go out there and dig on that shoe, I encourage them to listen, read your book, because you talk about your leadership, you talk about your relationship with your boss, the prime minister, Justin Trudeau. You talked about it, and you were very open talking about your relationship and how you made that better. How you, even when things when they said no, when they didn't agree with you, you were comfortable. Could you just tell me? I have to ask, how did you use your voice when, because a lot of Black girls, I feel they are confident. We don't have the confidence. Even if we get that job, we don't have the voice to voice our opinion. We're so scared. We're like, yeah, this job, but I need to protect that job, so I can't say what my is truly on my heart. How did you find that voice and use it, even when you were talking to your boss, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau?
Yes, that's a great question. And I'm not saying that I wasn't scared, but I knew that the way in which he was speaking to me, the manner in which I was being treated for 3 years culminated in a conversation that we had at the end of that fourth year. And when I was telling him that I was no longer going to run, and I was scared. And I was actually thinking at that point that he was going to call and say, Celina, we really value you. I don't want you to not run again. I want you to stay. I was naive to think that that would be the conversation. Instead, he started in on a rant, and I just thought about all the people that I represent. He was talking to me as if I was Celina,
Mm,
but I was Celina times 130,000 people that I represent.
that's
And
true.
there was no way, I don't care what his title was, that he was going to speak to me or any one of the 130,000 people I represent that way. And so in that moment, all of like my husband was watching me, circle. And he's like, I could see you turning green, babe. I could see the Incredible Hulk coming out of you. And in that moment, all of the pain, all of the hurt, all of the strength, every bit of value that I had in me came out in that moment. And I was like, not today. We are not doing this. This is the last Black woman that you speak to in that manner, ever.
Mm-hmm.
And so the challenge is, though, is that I knew, Anne, that I couldn't be fired. He can't fire me.
Yeah.
Right. I had to use that privilege of protection to say, this is not the way you treat people, and use that as an example for young people to say, oh, do you mean like people aren't supposed to speak to me that way? Yeah, no, they're not supposed to speak to you that way. And so when young people are in this situation, I say, look, I was in a different situation. They couldn't fire me. I was protected. But what we need to start doing is leveraging our village, using people around us to help us when we're in those situations, using people around us to like figure out a strategy when you're being bullied at work, or you're getting ostracized, or you're getting picked on. Use the people around you to help you in that situation. Don't try to do it by yourself. It's a painful exercise. And I don't think sometimes we think, as a strong Black woman, we need to like continue to perpetuate that trope. We're strong when we're smartest, and we're smartest when we lock hands, when we link with each other. And we need to do that more.
Celina, thank you so much for this wonderful message. I love how you ended this. We need to work with our community. We need to be a benefit for everyone, and not just an individual trying to fight the village yourself. Go together and always remember who you represent. I really appreciate your conversation with you today, because I mean, anyone who watches this will understand the reason why, as women of color, we could be everything. But all we are just asking for in return is love, and that you appreciate us as we are. Thank you. And I can't wait to hopefully meet you when I'm next in Canada. Speak to you again soon.
Thank you very much, Anne. Bye, and bye to your
Thank
viewers.
you.
Thank you.